I'm going to be turning 18 this October, and this is a great time for us to be educated on the political subjects of our nation because it is a privilege to not care about politics.
See, the thing is, people who don't care about politics are privileged in the sense that they can only not care about politics because they're not affected by it. But for somebody who spent their life in poverty, who looks to governmental schemes in order to, actually survive, literally survive, if there so happens to be a leader which does not express the concerns of those particular communities, then it becomes a problem. So politics matters to them. But I think as compassionate human beings, even if politics does not make a difference to us, we should realize that it makes a difference to literally the entire globe.
If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interest of transnational corporations.
Strongly agree.
So, globalization, it means that you are integrating the economy, the local economy with the world global economy.
Yes.
And the whole world is one single market.
Yes.
And now, if I have to play the devil's advocate, I can say that the corporations, they are going to provide jobs, they are going to lift people from poverty, which is also true.
Definitely.
So now, how will you counter that?
I will counter that by saying that even though, transnational corporations are extremely important in today's economy, it's their decision what they serve at an ethical stance. If they accumulate a lot of wealth, which almost all of them do at some point of their particular standing, then it comes to the point of what ethics they want to carry out. If, this immense gathering of wealth by transnational corporations is indeed inevitable, which I think it is, then I think the ethical stance, or rather I think it should be dictated by law, that a part of that should primarily be given to the welfare of humanity. Because if you see right now, we have the richest person in the world sitting at $100 billion. I mean, you would have to spend $50-40 million every day in order to get rid of this money in the first place. But there are just so many things that you can do for the better of humanity. And I think capitalism also has a good side. And that good side can be brought about if we primarily choose to serve humanity rather than our own personal greed.
If a very good person, a compassionate person is the CEO, like we can take Bill Gates' example. He made that Melinda Gates Foundation where he's donating 99% of his wealth, who is bringing a change in Africa.
Definitely.
If people like him, well there, it could work.
Yeah.
I remember reading a statement in my class 10 civics book of NCERT, an amazing book, really amazing book.
It was great.
And in the chapter of democracy, you cannot compare a practical democracy with the best case scenario of authoritarianism. So many times people say if we just had one person in power who could just bring changes without having a council, without having a vote, he could do all the work himself. He could make things happen in a faster pace and could bring good decisions without people bringing him down.
I think any person who is concentrated in a power has been a dictator, and they've never been elected. They've never been elected democratically. I think that any government which is focused on one person is inevitable to fall. Of course, some dictators have done good things, but to add it off, they've done terrible things to humanity, which people are still facing consequences for. You can argue that dictators like Fidel Castro or Saddam Hussein, they focused a lot on healthcare and education. But any person who's a dictator, you should know that a person will only be a dictator if they are selfish enough to want all the power in a nation. If a person is that selfish, how can they ever work for the welfare of humanity? That's an oxymoron in itself. That's a paradox in itself.
A very strong point.
Thank you.
Okay, so next question. I will always support my country whether it was right or wrong.
Strongly disagree.
Yes, I'll go with disagree. Because the thing is, I would support my country in one way, that in an international forum, I would want to show unity.
Yes,
but at the same time, I would like to make my country better. I can focus on the issue. If our opposition and the current and the leading government, if they don't work together in an international forum, it's going to bring shame upon us.
Definitely. See, you have to think of a country like a family, Of course, every family has its own problems. Every family has its own struggles. But fights within the family are within the family and not outside it. But I think unless and until there's something which is desperately wrong, unless a whole section of society is being completely marginalized, I think that's when we should actually criticize it at the internationals.
Okay, let's go to the next question. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Disagree?
If we're basing it on being born, if that's the basis of our pride, then it's foolish.
So I took the question in the sense as we are born and we are raised in that country.
My own understanding is, if we're not choosing our country of birth, we can't be proud of it on the basis of our birth here, Of course,
Okay.
I'm not proud of India because I was born in India. That just means I'm selfishly proud. I think that I'm such a good person that if I'm born in a particular country, that country will be great. But I think the basis of any pride should be accomplishment, should be
Yes.
ideals which you agree with.
Just on the basis of birth? No. But on the
No,
basis of its accomplishments, its rich history, the way you were raised up, the opportunities given to you by this country,
Yes.
you should be proud of it.
Precisely. Yes.
I think the next question will be very easy to answer. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Strongly disagree.
I disagree. I think I don't strongly disagree because Indians have different qualities, very different qualities compared to people outside, but I wouldn't necessarily call them superior. Superiority and inferiority is not to judge. I think that's also an Indian value, that there's no superiority within any value whatsoever. An Indian household will have very different values than an American household. We have a very strong emphasis on friendship, a very strong emphasis on family. So I think we have different qualities, but I wouldn't call them superior because of course that's very comparable thinking. I can't judge it.
Yeah, it's very subjective in nature. How do you know which
Definitely.
one is superior?
Yeah, definitely. That's not mine. That's God's work, not mine. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. I agree. Strongly agree.
Yeah.
Strongly agree.
Like if we take the current coronavirus case.
Yeah.
China!
China.
China!
China.
China!
China.
Someone just find out the truth.
Yeah,
what the
dude.
hell happened there?
It's too confusing to think what's right and what's wrong in this sense.
There is now a violent fusion of information and entertainment.
Agreed. Conspiracy theories are a perfect
Extremely.
example.
It just answers the last question, the one which we are just believing
right,
conspiracy
you're right,
theories.
yes.
Surprising thing is China, so many cases, so many reported cases,
Yeah, dude.
but we do not know what is the truth. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality.
Strongly agree.
Okay, yeah. In India also, if you see, you have bias towards people of your own state. Many people show that bias.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
Many people.
Definitely. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I agree.
Yeah, they both
I agree because
are connected in one way.
because if there's like rising inflation, there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to be employed anyway. And I think with rising inflation, it makes it harder for even poor people to survive than unemployment. So I think controlling inflation should have a greater priority. But of course, controlling unemployment is actually very important because if you don't control it, it actually does relate to a rising inflation.
Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulations. Strongly agree. But the regulation should not be extreme that it takes their business somewhere
Definitely,
else.
of course. But there should be regulations, of course.
Yeah, regulations must be there. People are greedy.
Greedy.
Extremely
Yeah,
greedy.
definitely, man.
From each according to his ability to each according to his needs is a fundamentally good idea. This is Marx.
Yeah.
This is Marxism, right?
I don't agree with it. I
Like-
disagree with it.
I'll give you an example. Like, have you heard of open source software?
yeah.
Free
Yeah,
and
yeah,
open
yeah.
source
Yes,
software.
yes.
From each according to his ability, whoever can contribute, give your contribution to
Yeah.
each according to his
Yeah.
need. I did not contribute, but I'm getting the full power of the software for free. But this can work because there is no scarcity in this case. Scarcity, right?
Definitely. I think it depends on the kind of thing that we're talking about. So, of course, if the context is distribution of food, that you would want to give that person enough so that he or she can survive, which is according to his need. So, I think that's a fundamentally good idea in very, very, very basic staples, very basic commodities. But if we're talking about the world as a whole, of course, I support affirmative action. I support reservations. I support anything we can do to make lives better. But I think that's also a very, very general statement. And if it has to be generalized this much, I will disagree with it.
I think we can take a small break and talk about reservation in India.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Because many people just go to social media without knowing what they're talking and bash reservation.
Yes, definitely. Then that's a lot of people.